Hi everyone. Today's gonna be a little bit of a different video. I am actually kicking off a new series here. I'm not sure how many videos it's gonna be, or if it's gonna be something I add on to. I already actually have 6 videos planned for this series. It doesn't have anything to do with my project usage, but I was recently asked on a video to maybe talk about some of the things that have in terms of like my makeup usage and how it's changed, but also about kind of like the basics of project panning, like what types of projects are there, how to get started on project panning. So I know that there's already other videos out there on this topic, but I thought I'd just add my 2 cents and I thought I'd take this video just to kind of give an introduction in terms of what is project panning, but also to myself and my experience with project panning. And then as part of this batch filming, I'm also going to talk about the types of project pans. I hope that you are interested, intrigued by what I might share about. I think a lot of people who might be watching this already, like, you're well versed in project pan. You have your own ways of approaching it. I think this is just the way I think through things, and this is the way that I have experienced project panning, and just kind of want to share kind of the few things I've picked up along the way. I'm also very much leaning in on like the coaching vibe because I recently started coaching very recently, and I enjoy it a lot. I feel very fulfilled by it, and I was like, maybe I can bring a little bit of like the coaching kind of thing into these. So I guess kind of see this as like me attempting to be like a project pan coach, trying to just kind of get you oriented with things and then send you off to your success. I feel like that's, as a coach, like that's really my goal, is to give those foundations and those basics, best practices if possible, suggestions if I can, encouragement along the way. But really, this is your success and this is your project panning journey, or really just life journey. I feel like it's a lot of these practices are very applicable to life, and I've definitely folded a lot of them into my own life. So hopefully you're excited for the series as much as I am. I like sat down and wrote up already like 6 video ideas and did my best to really like break it down, because I feel like it could just be a lot, right? I feel like for me, project panning has been a very loaded journey, very emotional journey, very personal journey. I feel like I have become very emotionally connected to my, especially makeup, in terms of I feel like project panning now has become a little bit all encompassing with like just the idea of finishing things up, whether that be skincare, hair care, nails, beauty, makeup. But for me, it really started as makeup. So let me backtrack a little bit. I know I'm going to seem scatterbrained. That's just how my brain works. That's just how I process and spit out information. It doesn't always connect. So if I kind of backtrack on myself, that's kind of what's happening. Also, I'm sorry, there's not going to be a ton of visual. There's not going to be any visuals actually, or really like, cool pop-ups and stuff like that. That's just, it's not the way I create content. It's just very raw. It's pretty much one take. So here you go. So I think my history with project panning started way back in I would say like 2013, 2014. I had started building up my makeup collection. There was various reasons for why my makeup collection had increased and grown. I had an interest in makeup kind of back in high school, and it just kind of grew from there. Kind of was struck with the realization that this is not a good use of my money. I was a college student at the time, and I was like, this is not not the way I should be spending my limited resources, both my money as well as my time, because I was that type of makeup consumer, was researching my products, look at reviews, go to the store, swatch it as much as I could, and double back on myself. And it was just this whole process that took up a lot of time, especially as a college student and like trying to get through classes, right? So yeah, I think that realization came, and just kind of doubled down on it. I found a few resources up front. It was one that was around the time when project panning on YouTube had started. I did not start my own content back then, but I was watching pretty diligently, I think, over the next 4 or 5 years. And then I also found the makeup rehab community on Reddit, and that one is quite strong, still is quite strong. And there's also like related subreddits on Reddit. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit and how that has shaped my panning journey. But yeah, so I've kind of been in this space since over a decade ago, about 12 or 13 years now. So I feel like I've, I haven't like consistently been a part of the community, but I definitely really honed in. I think I really engaged with the Reddit community in like 2016, 2017 is what I really recall. And then I really started creating YouTube content only about 2 years ago. I had some other YouTube content, but it wasn't very like Project Pan based. But I've been watching and I've been listening, and I've been really in still, I attribute a lot of my project planning success to kind of consuming this type of content versus other content. So that is a whole nother topic that I will actually talk about in a different video in terms of what you should surround yourself with, but it has been a big part of my journey. Okay, so let's say you are ready for your project pan, whatever it may look like. I think that's the big one first, is to really know for yourself, like, what are your goals for project panning, and can you visualize, in the next, by the end of the year, or by, 2 years, or even 6 months, even shorter time periods, is like, where would you realistically, I think realistically is really a key word here in project planning, realistically see yourself in terms of towards your goals, right? I think especially with project planning being a little bit of a fad now versus like, I really see it more of a lifestyle, where you have to kind of separate from the fad and like the hype, versus your actual own personal journey and what you want to get through it. I know it sounds really deep, because it is, and also project planning has become a very deep journey for me, so I'm sorry if I talk that way, but I would say be careful if you're getting into this because you're like, project planning seems like a great idea, I'm going to jump into it. I would also say be careful if you want to finish things because you want to buy more things. I think that that's a big part of project planning, so that sometimes can get confusing, is and I did this too, is like, oh, I want to try more things, so that means I need to finish some things up first. And for me, it's taken a long time and still is tough to break away from that using things up is different than purchasing things, right? And I think the commitment needed to use things up is a lot greater than putting in that financial purchase to buy something new. So I think just be careful if those things pop into your head, is like, oh, the reason I want a project pan is because I want to ultimately buy more and try more things. That's probably not going to work out for you in the long run. So I think just be careful with that, and set your expectations up accordingly. I would honestly really suggest writing things down, typing it up. Best would actually be talking it out loud, to someone that you trust. For me, project panning actually did start a little bit out as like a shameful process, and just like even acknowledging that with someone that I trusted was super, super helpful in that process. So I think I'm just going to bring those topics that I want to talk about in now, is make sure that you have some ways of accountability and some ways of community. Those are the two words that I wrote down, and I really want to say them out loud. I think accountability can look a few different ways in your journey. I think it can be, of course, accountability is often seen as like other people or help you stay accountable, but I know sometimes like you don't always have people around you who are also interested in makeup or really understand like why you want a project pan. So I would say, even if that's just like you writing out things like in a journal or typing things up, and then writing down like what are your actual goals, so that way you can go back and review them as like you're being accountable to yourself. So find some of those ways to do that. And the community is huge. At least for me, it was big. It was for me to realize like I'm not in this journey alone, that I'm not the one struggling with some of these thoughts, some of the spirals I would have, that guilt that I would have when I place another order, and it's been a while since I've been in like deep, I think, into that consumeristic mindset. So I'm like kind of really digging deep right now, but like I do remember those moments of being like really feeling super guilty, feeling like I spent my money on that. I could have spent on something better, things like that. But I think community is super important. I think the Reddit community is awesome. I know that's not often talked about on here. But yeah, the makeup rehab community is great. I know the Project Pan subreddit is also up and booming. And there's just other like places. I know Instagram also has a very large Project Pan community, as well as here on YouTube. So find your niche, find your people. Just be surrounding yourself with people who are kind of in a similar boat to you. I think what I really liked about the Reddit community was that it's more or less anonymous, unless you want to, share anything that's kind of personal. Um, and I think that makes it a little bit easier to enter into that versus I think on YouTube, like often you're showing your face. And same thing with Instagram, you're often showing something personal, or at least that's kind of a lot of people work towards that. So yeah, I would say like find the group that, or find like the platform that works best for you. And at least start observing, start reading other people's stories. I think Reddit was a great place where people actually told stories and actually told about their journey, and it was encouraged to do so. And even to like post there when there was like definitely like when you were in that power struggle, right? Like I definitely posted there a few times where it was like, I have stuff in my cart. Like, I don't know if I need these things, talk me out of it. So I think that was really cool. And people would respond like within the hour, as long as you're willing to wait. I think that's a big part of project planning too, but we'll get to that later. um, okay, I think another thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about is give yourself a pilot period. Project planning is not for everybody. I've heard it being said before. I think it's a good practice for everybody, whether or not you are aware that you're doing it or not. But for people who, especially someone like myself, who kind of dug myself into a hole and felt super overwhelmed, I'm very easily overwhelmed, and I kind of get this like paralyzed type response to it, where I'm like, okay, so if I don't see a good solution to this, then I'm not going to do it, right? Versus like give yourself a pilot period. And I think a lot of people take this in different ways. You can either set your goals to be quite small. I think that project planning goals are actually a spectrum of things. It's not just finishing things, which I know a lot of people do talk about, but sometimes it's just getting used on things. Project planning, I think ultimately is using what you have. And I think that can be 3 uses. That can even be 1 use to see if you should like declutter it or not. That can be a week's worth of use. That can be a month. That can be a visual goal, right? Especially if it's something that you can kind of track visually. Uses, yeah, I already mentioned usage goals are really useful as well. Or the finish goal, right? Or hit pan, which is kind of where the word project pan comes from. But yeah, it's become like a spectrum of goals. And I think you have to define for yourself for each product and category that you're looking at, like what is an actual realistic goal. And the reason why I say have a pilot period, this kind of comes from my own experience as I work in academia. Yeah, I think I'll just say I work in academia. I'm really a stay-at-home mom most of the time, but I have my background is in academic research, and pilot projects are so important, right? Because you want to see if it even works, if your ideas even work. Is it even feasible? Is it sustainable? Is it something that you can actually keep going? Is it actually something that make you feel excited for, right? So have a kind of like a pilot project. I think have just a few products that you're like, I really enjoy those products. I think that's a good big one. Like don't we call it hate panning, where it's you are using something because you have to, and then you're just like so annoyed with it. I think actually choose the things that you really want to hit pan on, and it might not be your most favorite product, right? Because sometimes your most favorite product, you're like, I don't want to see that go. So that in its own essence is like hate panning. But I would use something that you're pretty comfortable with seeing gone, but also not something that you're like, ugh, like I hate, using that. So I would pick, just a handful of products, give some low usage goals, some easy goals you can reach. It could either be just use these for a week and see where you're at, or, use these as long as you can until you hit that pan or have it half empty or something like that. I'm just kind of throwing out suggestions, like be creative. But use that as a pilot period for yourself. Give yourself a lot of grace. It can maybe take a little bit longer than you expected to. And also have fun with it. I think like I said, be creative with it. And if something isn't working for you during that pilot period, then like put it away or declutter it or something like that. I think that's super helpful. I think I think either before or after your pilot period, I think it depends on how you want to approach this. I think if you're someone who's very overwhelmed like I am, it's super important to take inventory. Like I'm a kind of person who's like, what's the word, like, or there's like a phrase, right? It's like, if you can't see it, then it's not a problem. And that's exactly how I handle a lot of things in life, actually. So it's super important for me to pull everything out, do a full inventory out of all the nooks and crannies, um, and see, like, I might have a lot more than I am touching every day. And I need to own up to that. And I need to swallow that guilt. And I need to say, I am going to slowly work through these. And it's also an opportunity for you to maybe do a small declutter as well. I think for me, declutters are super helpful, where if there's things that are expired, if there's things that's obviously not working and I'm just not excited about, I am just going to let those things go. Um, I know that might be a little bit harder for some people than others, just based on varying reasons. Uh, Something might be nostalgic, something might be super pricey, something might be, a gift. So I think, you don't have to declutter them right away, but I think just kind of put a mark on them and say, like, at some point I need to figure out what to do with this. It's totally okay to take some time with that, but to mentally make that note, I think is already a huge step forward. Um, And yeah, I think just be honest with yourself. I think from there, that's kind of where you can pick your products for your little pilot project. And then, you know, be okay with what happens. And this could actually take multiple attempts. It might not just be like one, you just go from the start line. This might be something you circle back to. I know I do. I circle back to this process, at least once a year, if not twice a year. And just to kind of really kind of take inventory of what I have and where I'm at, where are my goals, because they do shift and change over time. So I think just being honest with that. Um, I think also a big part for me was that having a little dedicated makeup space for my project pan items, at least for me to visually look at them, because I'm like that kind of person. I need to be reminded every day of what products I'm doing. I think that would be really helpful. So some people, for me, it's just like a little makeup tray that I have, and that's been super awesome. It looks really nice. It just sits on in the space that I do my makeup, and it makes it really easy for me. I just kind of switch things out as I want to. And I make sure to include the things that I'm project panning. For other people, it may look like a weekly basket or a monthly basket. You can definitely look up videos of people who are pulling products for that, and kind of watch how they make decisions in that way. But I would definitely encourage a space for the products that you want to be panning, and maybe some additional ones that you might be wanting to try out or just have a few uses on and stuff like that. I think that just diminishes a lot of like the decision anxiety that I personally have. I know some people really love that process, and there's a time and place for that. I definitely do. But every day, that's a little bit much for me. So I definitely encourage you, if you have like decision paralysis, or you kind of are coming up against that, and that might be one of the reasons why you feel so overwhelmed, definitely have a dedicated makeup space, have dedicated makeup choices. Um, have a way to mark what products that you're wanting to be using. So like I said, having a dedicated space, but I've even used things like nail stickers so that I have an additional layer of visual reminders to do that. I sometimes also write up all the project pan items that I have on a little sticky note, stick that on the mirror that in the space that I'm in. And so that way I can look at the list and just kind of double check, just like, am I reaching for that? Great. Keeping track as well of your progress. Even a little bit of progress is like, yes. So ways to track that are different for everyone. I wish I kind of had a few things to pull, but if you begin to watch project panning videos, you'll definitely see them. Some people will mark them with Sharpies. Some people will just be counting usage, so they just have it on a piece of paper and they mark it that way. Some people do it electronically, which is awesome as well. Some people should do visual, right? There's often words printed, and if it's a clear bottle or a clear product, a clear container, then you can kind of, track your progress if it nicely, is trackable, or it might track upwards as well. You'll get to know your products that way. I think, I think those were kind of my main things in terms of, things to think about when you're preparing for a project pan. I think kind of bigger picture, it's great to finish things, but I think ultimately the bigger picture for me has always been, how can I be a smarter user of my products? So it's actually getting to know my products and like really get to know them. Like I've talked about before, seeing my products almost like, I don't want to like animate them, but in a way it's like, that's kind of the commitment, right? It's like, if I commit to finishing this, I really need to get to know it, get to know how to use it, get to know the way I like to use it, does it pair better with other things than by itself? Does it maybe pair with other colors better than itself? Do I need to mix it, franken it? That's another word for mixing that we use in this community, is franken. Um, and I think that has actually helped me finish a lot of products more, is to be willing to go through the process of getting to know my products. And you can actually be surprised, some of the products you thought you couldn't make it work, you made it work and you managed to finish it. And I think that's been probably one of the most exciting parts about project planning for me. And I think also like the financial piece too, right? I don't want to leave that out, because I think a lot of people start project planning because of financial goals or financial issues. And I think that it's important to have an idea of ultimately where your financial goals are, because makeup expires, beauty products expire. You're gonna need to go out and buy more at some point, right? Like, say everything was gone one day, like you're gonna need to go out and buy more. You don't have to, but you'd buy some things, right? So I would say definitely scale back on your spending. But I wouldn't come, especially if you're fresh to this and you've been in the habit of like spending and spending and spending, it's gonna be really tough. Like, that's a whole nother layer of Project Pan that I don't think is talked about very much, is that it ultimately is an addiction. And I think like it can be an addiction. I'm not ultimately, let me rephrase that. It can be an addiction for some people to be spending, right? Like, there is that aspect that I don't want to leave out, is that this sometimes is like kind of a more, there's a lot of deeper things that are going on. You might be spending because of personal reasons. You might be spending because you're stressed out. You might be spending because something big happened, right? And I don't want to discount that or diminish that, because I know for me that was part of my journey, was to understand like maybe this is a little bit of an addiction, maybe not so much financially, but it was an addiction of my time, and to be honest with that. So I think that's where the subreddit of Makeup Rehab was so helpful for me, because people called that out and people were completely honest with that process and that journey, and like encouraging people to seek help when you need help. There's, I think, also like links and resources on that subreddit as well. So I would definitely say, like, if that is something you struggle with, don't discount that, and definitely seek out help when you feel ready. Because I think that our consumption of products should not define us or overwhelm us, or like manipulate us in a way that we don't want to choose to do. And so yeah, I think I just wanted to put that out there, because that's definitely not talked about a lot. I think people just talk about like, yeah, I used up stuff, but that sometimes it's something a little bit deeper, and that anything where we overuse, overspend, over whatever, we should just be treading carefully. And I think that Project Pan is a really, really great response, I think, to that. But I think not to see it as the ultimate fix, right? So anyhow, sorry to kind of end on a weird note, but I think it's all important. Anyways, I hope that you are excited about project panning. I hope that this maybe affirms some of the thoughts that you had about project panning. I hope that it could even have a few new things that to be thinking about in terms of project panning. But I wish you the best of luck in your project panning journey. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to pop them down below in terms of things I could maybe talk about, or questions that you have about your journey, because I think everyone's journey is different. Everybody's situation is different. There's no, project panning isn't like a one-all fix for anything, but I think it really is, it can be made into a really, really fun activity and something that you engage in, and hopefully that we can be a community here that can support you through it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.